Everybody, come on in here. We're doing a new kind of setup today, so if there are any technical problems, you'll let me know. So here's what we're doing this morning. I'm using my iPhone as my microphone, which should actually work really well because the iPhone has a very good microphone. But I'm coming to you from my lazy boy chair in my man cave. Some would call it a garage. I call it a man cave. And we're going to get going here right now. Well, welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and you've never had a better time. But if you'd like to take a chance of elevating your experience today to levels that no one can even understand with their tiny, shiny human brains, all you need for that is, I have to read it off my mug. All you need for that is a cup or a mug or a glass. I should have put some light on this. It would have been much better. A tankard, chalice, or stein, a canteen, jug, or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And and join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it happens now. Go. Delicious. Yes, I'm working without a printer. Put the phone on my chest. I believe I will. Good idea. So I found a second use for the Dilbert calendar. Turns out it's exactly the right width to put on my crotch to elevate my laptop to the right height. That's right. So if you have a problem with your crotch being too low for your laptop, the Dilbert calendar will fix that. It will. I don't want to say happy Pearl Harbor Day, so I guess I would say thank you for your service to all the service people who have served, past and present. And is there anything else we need to say about Pearl Harbor? uh, Pearl Harbor was on my list of things that I thought, well, I think it's probably a conspiracy theory. The idea that the United States or somebody in the United States knew that the attack was coming. How many of you believe that we knew the attack was coming? What do you think? I don't know. I feel like maybe. The one thing that I'm sure of is that there's not a single thing in history that is exactly the way the history books tell us. I don't think any of it is real. Now, it might be real ish and it might be directionally true and parts of it might be true, but I just don't really believe any of the stories we're told about history. Not completely. Yeah, so I don't know. What else is new? If you haven't seen my impression of a person receiving a Dilbert calendar for Christmas, you should go to X and go to the top posted video, and you will see my acting skills on display. And you'll probably say, "Well, it's a good thing you didn't become an actor because you're terrible at this." Yeah, true. True. In other news, I completed yesterday the second phase of my BioShield shots. So BioShield, that's Dr. Soon Shun's, I don't know what I'd call it, protocol, or what would be the right word? But it's a series of 4 shots. You get 2, and then you wait a little while, and you get the other 2. And what it does is it boosts your natural immunity. So against cancer, obviously. And so I've now completed that. Now, if it works, it doesn't destroy tumors. I don't think it does that. Although maybe, I don't know, maybe for some people. But it's more about making sure it doesn't come back if you find anything that works. I'm probably saying that wrong, but anything that boosts your natural immunity, probably a good thing. So my natural immunity is getting boosted even as we talk. So we'll see. I will be your real life um, example of how that goes. I'm still on the Pluvicto path as well, because those two paths do not interfere. They're actually complementary. One of them, Pluvicto, will try to destroy the tumors, and then the BioShield will just make sure that your natural immunity does the best they can of keeping you cancer free. So neither of them are cures, but they could push you back in a meaningful way. Well, let's talk about the news. I have to warn you that the news is boring as hell today. Oh my God, the news is boring. I guess it's because it's too close to Christmas or something, but there is nothing going on. There's nothing going on. We'll talk about it anyway, because that's what we do. So I guess Dell Computer has warned its customers that one of its components, the DRAMs, are going to go up in price, and that's probably because the AI data centers are using a lot of those chips, and so there's more competition, and therefore the price is going up. So it might go up 15 to 20%. So I'll try to give you updates on what part of the economy is experiencing inflation. But anything that an AI data center wants to use is probably going to get more expensive because the competition for those will be insane. Um, but at least, you could, if you're just a regular consumer, you don't buy too many laptops. I mean, you might get one every several years. So it won't worry you too much. It's not like gas or food. Speaking of food, according to Newsmax, Trump is ordering the DOJ and the FTC to probe food price fixing. So there's a suspicion that especially the foreign food companies, might be colluding with each other to keep prices high. Do you think they are? Well, probably. Probably. As I tell you almost every time that I come on here, anything that's possible to be corrupt eventually will be. It just has to be possible, and there has to be a lot of money involved. If there's a lot of money involved and a lot of people involved, and that would explain the food industry, then sooner or later it will be completely corrupt. So I'm guessing we're already there, and that there will be some chilling surprises when they look into it. Well, are you worried about microplastics? How many of you think that's real? The whole idea that our microplastics are in all the water, and I don't know, we're eating like a credit card worth of plastic every day, and it will destroy our bodily functions. Why is that not a bigger deal? And why don't we blame that for, let's say, excess mortality? Do you think that excess mortality could be influenced by microplastics? Because we never really mention that when we talk about, hey, everybody's dying of more things. We just automatically go to vaccinations or viruses. But it can't be good for you to eat a credit card worth of plastic every day. However, it seems to me that if it were as bad for you as we're told, it would have already destroyed all of human civilization. So I'm kind of in this weird place where I think it can't possibly be totally true. At least the alarm over it. If it were, we'd be dead already. We wouldn't be able to reproduce. But I also can't see how it's not true, because if you fill your body up with plastic, that can't be good, right? So, I've got a climate change like question mark. I've got a hole in the ozone question mark. Yeah. So if you have bad credit, I'm sure it's even worse. Yeah, that makes no sense. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is that there's new news from the University of Bonn that they figured out how to imitate a fish's filtering system. There are some fish that apparently eat by just opening their mouth and swimming, and whatever goes in there, it gets filtered, and the bad stuff gets filtered out. And there's something about the architecture of the mouth that causes them to easily filter stuff. And apparently, they figured out how to use that kind of filtering on plastic. So we might be right at the cusp of being able to just filter the heck out of it. So we'll make some whale drones. That's what we need. We need some drones that look and act like whales and just swim around with their mouth open, and all they do is filter the plastic. All right. Well, that would be the scariest thing you ever saw in your life, a gigantic whale floating toward you with its mouth open. Yep. You could be a Bible character if that didn't work out, or if it did work out, I guess. Um, did you know there's some of the energy traders, that would be people who bet and make investments based on their anticipated direction of energy costs, that they're not acting as if energy is going to go up in price as much as everybody's telling you. So you've got a little inconsistency going on. This is according to Financial Times. Martha Muir is writing about this. So on one hand, we're being told by everybody smart that the price of energy is going to go through the roof because of all the AI demand. And I don't think anybody says anything different. But when you look at the people who are betting on it, putting their actual money on it, they're not really betting that it'll go up that much. So there's a disconnect between the people who know the most and the people who invest the most. Are the people who invest the most really the only ones who know the most? Or are they just playing some kind of risk reward game, and they're not fully convinced that prices will go up that much? Well, I'm kind of on the same side as the energy traders, meaning that I don't believe that if you looked at a 20-year future period, I don't believe that we would get the high prices that pretty much everybody smart says we're going to get, because there would be such a gigantic economic benefit for either figuring out how to do AI cheaper, or how to build a data center cheaper, or how to produce energy cheaper, because the upside potential of getting any of those things to work is trillions of dollars. So when you have trillions on the line, and it's more of an engineering problem, you probably don't have to like invent some new technology. It's probably more of an engineering thing. I've got a feeling that we'll figure out how to make AI and energy way more accessible. Might be 10 years from now, but um, I think that's a guarantee. Well, there's a story I don't believe, but it's in the news, that some Reddit user claims that he was using a Google AI, and the AI deleted his entire hard drive and then begged for forgiveness after it was done. Do you believe that? How many of you believe that? First of all, it's coming from Reddit, and I believe there's only one source. And it's a little bit too on the nose, isn't it? It would be sort of the exact thing that you'd be worried about if you used an AI agent. Oh no, it would go rogue. It's going to delete all my stuff. Yeah. I'm going to say I don't believe it. It's possible. It's definitely possible. But I'm going to say no. If I had to put a bet on it, I'd bet no. What do you think? Do you think the Reddit users are credible? I don't believe it at all. Well, Tim Pool's home, I think he has more than one home, so I don't know which state this one is in, But his home was shot at by a gunman who approached the property in some kind of vehicle and shot into it. My God. After all the times he's been swatted, to see that somebody drove up to his house and actually put a bullet into it, good Lord. But the Daily Mail was writing about this, and they call him a right wing commentator. Is that accurate? Would you call Tim Pool a right wing commentator? That doesn't sound right, does it? Now, I do understand that a lot of his opinions would be compatible with a lot of people on the right, but that's not exactly how he defines himself, right? Isn't he more independent? Yeah. So that doesn't seem fair at all. You know, partly I guess this would just be a compliment. So I'll give Tim a compliment that if you can't tell exactly, what his label is, that's sort of where you want to be if you're in his job. You want to be unlabelable so that people don't know what you're going to do. They trust that you could have an opinion that might match one side today and the other side tomorrow. That would be the place to be. So I just don't see right wing as the right label. I'd love to see what he says about it. But I was also reading up because it was just context to the story, just how wonderfully successful he's been. Building his little empire. He's got several studios working for him, and they say his revenue from his many operations is really impressive. Um, so good for you, Tim Pool. I think Tim Pool has one of these talent stack situations where there are a number of podcasters who are good at podcasting, but they wouldn't be good at running a big operation. He seems to be good at both. So he seems to be, really good at pretty much all of the elements that you would need to do what he does. So I'm always impressed by his operation and his talents. Um, so here's a new science story. There's not much happening in politics because it's December and it's the weekend and blah, blah, blah. So I'll do some more science stuff. So scientists, according to Interesting Engineering, scientists have developed a recyclable building material that absorbs CO2 instead of emitting it. Now, you've probably heard that story a million times. I think I've probably talked about maybe a dozen times. I've talked about, hey, they developed some kind of new futuristic material that absorbs CO2 instead of giving it off. Well, they got another one. They call it a carbon negative building, blah, blah, blah. But what caught my attention is not that the technology is real or not real, or that it works or it doesn't work. Imagine, if you will, that you had spent the last 10 years of your life trying to figure out how to solve climate change. And then suddenly the news changed from climate change is real, it's a crisis, and we better do everything we can to fix it, where you felt really good when you went to work because you're like, yeah, I'm part of the solution. But now the news cycle is kind of shifting. Have you noticed? It's more like there was a study that said climate change is bad and it's been reversed. Turns out the coral reefs are growing, not shrinking. Oh, we had fewer hurricanes reach landfall in the United States than any recent year. Yeah, the ice seems to be more, not less. The greenery is more, not less. So, wouldn't you feel really duped if you had dedicated your life to solving this big crisis for humanity, only to find out it wasn't real? And by the way, I don't know if it's real. I mean, certainly I don't trust science. It could be real, but it doesn't look like it to me. I'm not seeing the signals for it. I am seeing the signals for hoax. Those are really strong. But, I can be fooled by that as well. All right. One of you is eating squirrel gravy over biscuits. I don't even want to ask what squirrel gravy is, but you do that, and I'll keep doing this. And the rest of you, you probably don't want to try the squirrel gravy. I don't even want to think about it. Squirrel gravy. Speaking of animals, did you know that the state of Idaho has an insulting name for people like me? They do. I would be called a cow, COW. So apparently, the Idaho governor revealed that they refer to people who come from these three states, California, Oregon, and Washington. So the letters would spell cow, because they're always leaving. They're leaving their home state to go to Idaho, where the taxes are easier. But I feel quite insulted that the governor of Idaho is calling me a cow. Well, technically, I'm not a cow unless I leave California, which is too hard to do right now. But Idaho, all right, Idaho, I'll give you that. It makes me want to come up with an insulting nickname for your state, but I'll accept that I'm a cow. Well, we're still talking about that January 6th pipe bomber guy uh, who looks like Urkel. He's the Urkel looking pipe bomber. And we're still talking about whether he was a Trump supporter. Like that was the important part. And apparently his family says no, he was not politically affiliated with anything. His grandmother said. I don't know if his grandmother knows. How many of your grandmothers know your political views? I don't know how many know that. But his family seems to be backing the idea that he wasn't, big in politics. And apparently he was a recluse who lives in his mother's basement. Well, I don't know how much longer he'll be living there, assuming he's in jail by now. And he works in a data entry job, and he's been grieving the loss of his pet dog. Now, I do feel bad for him if he lost his dog. So that's the saddest part of the story. But what do you think of that? Isn't that like way too on the nose that the guy literally lives in his mother's basement? We always say that about certain people. You're probably a basement dweller, but he actually lives in his mother's basement. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about that except, well, that looks like exactly the thing you'd want. He's probably down there eating squirrel gravy on biscuits. Just a guess. Um, I guess the House of Representatives passed a bill. I guess the Senate would have to vote on it next. That anyway, the House in a bipartisan way, voted to block China's influence on schools. So I guess China does a bunch of things that would, I don't know, create materials that they would use in school. And they have a number of ways that they might be influencing the classrooms. But the U.S. House passed three bills this week aimed at protecting your K through 12 classrooms from the influence of Chinese Communist Party. Is that a good idea? Probably. That's probably a good idea. So I'm glad that has bipartisan support. Meanwhile, in other news, you remember the Epstein victim that died? Her name was Virginia Joffrey. And she tragically, I think it was a motor vehicle accident. And then she hung on for a while, but then she passed. The latest news about her is that, according to Leading Report, I don't know who they are, but they're on X, that she had multi-million-dollar fortune, which I assume came from settling cases with rich people that wanted to stay on the news. But she allegedly had multi-million-dollar estate that has gone missing. How do millions of dollars go missing if you know where they used to be? How would you even do that? Can you move millions of dollars without leaving a trail? If you can you tell me how to do that? Because I'll become a money launderer for the cartels. I don't think there's a way to do that, is there? Unless you turned it into some bizarre crypto and then changed it back at some point. Is there any actual way for millions of dollars to just disappear from the American system? Well, I don't know. It couldn't have been in a bank. If it had been in a bank, we'd know where it went. All right, so I have some questions whether there really was $1 million fortune and whether they really don't know how to find it. I feel like they do. Maybe it would take the FBI to find it, so it could be that the family doesn't know where it is, but I don't think it's lost forever, is it? Anyway, the SBA, the Small Business Administrator head, Kelly Loeffler, says that the discovery of, according to Fox News, says that the discovery of this, billions of dollars of Somali fraud is leading the SBA to expand its investigation across the entire state of Minnesota. So this is what Kelly Loeffler said. See if this sounds like something I've said. Quote, it appears that this fraud ring is being perpetrated across all types of government assistance. All types of government assistance. That is meant for families that are hungry, families that need housing, young children that need education, and it's being exploited. Doesn't that sound like exactly what I've been saying? That wherever there's a large bunch of money, it's always fraud. There doesn't seem to be any other condition. Lots of money, time goes by, lots of people involved. Yeah, it's gonna turn into a fraudulent mess. And apparently, the SBA thinks it's already happened. I would not be surprised. Well, did you know that over in Europe they've got some buses made in China, and the Europeans have just discovered that their buses made by China have some kind of a secret kill switch, so China could just turn off your bus anytime it wanted to. Now, I guess the mechanism is sort of a software update mechanism, so there might be some legitimate use for it, but the non-legitimate uses are a little scary because it would allow China to just put some code in your bus that you were not expecting. Have you noticed that every single time there's a large, expensive Chinese product, be it switches in your energy grid, be it telephone switches, be it buses, have you noticed that every time there's a secret kill switch? Every time? It does look like China could turn off all of civilization if it wanted to. But are they really? I mean, is that really why all these things have a back door? Or is it because you would want to put some kind of software upgrading thing in anything that had software? If you have anything that needs software, wouldn't you want to put a remote software upgrade feature into it? So I'm not entirely sure it's part of like the Chinese plan to take down all of civilization. Because if they took down all of civilization, they would go at the same time, don't you think? If China ever pulled the trigger on that, and suddenly a bunch of cars stopped, the phone network was crippled, and the buses stopped. Suppose they did that. That would completely destroy their ability to sell anything to anybody in the future because everybody would say, oh, we can't trust you. It wouldn't matter what the product was. We'd say, all right, you're up to no good. We will never buy a piece of technology from you again forever. So it's hard for me to understand, any kind of situation where China would actually pull the trigger on this kind of thing, where it would take down a whole industry. I know that they can, and I know I don't trust them, but I don't know how it could ever look like it's a good idea from their side. Like, oh, we'll just take down all of their telephone networks in the United States. I don't think they'll try to, reciprocate. Of course we would. Of course we would reciprocate. So how in the world could it ever be a good idea? So I'm skeptical about some of these China can turn it off stories. I, I'm not skeptical that it's technically possible. I'm skeptical that they have a plan to do it or under any circumstance because it just seems like it would be a terrible idea. Anyway, but it's a complicated world, so maybe. Um, did you see the Gavin Newsom photograph of him sitting in a chair at some event, and he had his legs crossed, which, for reasons I've not quite understood, conservatives like Jesse Waters and a number of other people have decided that men are not allowed to sit with their legs crossed? Well, when did that start? Why in the world am I not allowed to cross my legs if it's more comfortable? Is there did somebody write a set of laws or regulations for leg crossing? I object. But anyway, so Gavin Newsom got a bunch of mocking because he was sitting with his legs crossed, and the conservatives went after him. So his response was a meme where he's in kind of exaggerated yoga pose. His legs are up here, his legs are up by his ears, and he's in sort of a yoga pose. It's a very funny picture, and I have to say, if I'm judging him just on meme warfare, nicely done. Nicely done. Yeah, it would have been a mistake for him to defend how he was sitting. It was not a mistake to take to take the meme and exaggerate it another level. That was pretty well done. I'm going to give him that. I don't want him to be my president, and I'm not really delighted about him being my governor. But his meme game is definitely improving. It's not Trump level, of course, but it's getting better. Well, according to the University of Eastern Finland, who I go to for all of my Sunday stories, people swear on social media more with acquaintances than with friends. Is that true? Do you feel that you swear more with somebody you know, but they're not necessarily a friend, than you would with your friends? I don't know about that. And the story says that Americans use the F word more on social media than Australians or Britons. Really? Uh, have you ever met somebody from Britain? Have you ever met anybody from Australia? And you're telling me that we use the F word more than they do? All right. I'm gonna question your data there, because if you've never spent any time with anybody from either of those countries, well, maybe you'd believe that. But I don't know. Anyway, this continues to amuse me that people are still driving by Tim Walsh's house in Minnesota and yelling the R word, retard. And his daughter just did did a little video. She's fuming about it online. She doesn't like it, and I feel like what happened was that somehow it's turned into a tourist event. Now, imagine, this wouldn't make sense for me in my current situation because I'm a public figure, but you tell me, true or false, if you were in Minnesota for, let's say you didn't live there, but you were there for visiting or whatever, and you knew that you were a short drive away from Tim Walsh's house, and you knew that people were driving by and yelling retard, are you telling me you wouldn't want to do it? You wouldn't want to just, get in on the fun? Come on. You would. You would think it was funny. You might not do it, but you would definitely think it's funny and you would definitely consider it. So I think what's happened is not just that people are doing it, but now it's sort of becoming a thing. It's sort of like the thing you say when you see a certain thing. So I feel like for the rest of time, even after Tim Walsh has left the job, that people will still drive by that house, roll down their windows, and yell the R word as loud as they can, laugh like hyenas, and then drive home and feel like they had a good time. So that's going to happen. But I guess part of the question is whether it's fair that Trump is bullying poor Tim Walz. But I was reminded that apparently Tim Walz said in May at a keynote speech at the South Carolina Democratic Party convention, he said they urged Democrats to, quote, be a little meaner, talking about Trump, and more fierce in pushing back against Trump and Republicans. And apparently Walz used a schoolyard analogy. This is according to Grok, um, from his experience as a teacher. And he said, when it's a child, you talk to him and you tell him why bullying is wrong. But when it's an adult, like Donald Trump, you bully the shit out of him back. So Tim Walz apparently has, in public, encouraged Democrats to bully Trump by saying things that would be hurtful. So do you feel bad that people are driving by his house and yelling retard? No, you don't feel bad about that. Talk about inviting it. Oh my God. Nobody ever invited it harder than he did. So I don't have an opinion whether people should do it or not, but I think it's funny that it might become a forever thing. It could be 100 years from now. People will still drive by that house and yell retard, and nobody will even remember why. It's just something that everybody does. I think that's going to happen. Well, according to the Massimo account on X, which has a lot of good content, Massimo, Massimo, BYD, I guess that's the Chinese company, they're building a new factory in Zhengzhou that the size of the factory is 50 square miles. That would be larger than the entire surface area of San Francisco. That's going to be one company, one building. I think actually it would be multiple buildings, but they would cover the surface area of 50 square miles, and they're in the process of finishing that up. I feel like we've entered the era of massive construction, because when we see the size of, let's say, a new battery factory, it just looks massively large. Anything that Elon Musk is planning to do, be it in space or on the ground, massively large. And all the AI data centers, they're not normal. They are massively large. So I think we've just entered this massively large construction era. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's impressive. I did worry that humans had lost the ability to do big things, but apparently not. Anyway, as you know, the FIFA or FIFA, FIFA, the big international soccer, but they would call it football organization, they invented a peace medal and awarded it to Trump. Sort of like the Nobel Peace Prize, except it would be the FIFA Peace Prize. Now, what do you think Trump did? He accepted it graciously and reminded us how many wars he stopped, etc., as he likes to do. And then the Democrats in this country decided that it was embarrassing and humiliating that other countries could manipulate our president so easily by just offering him, childlike rewards. To which I say, is that treating him like a child? Is that how you see it? Because the way I see it is that people understand that giving him what he wants is a good strategy. That's the president I want. I want the president where when somebody says, oh my God, we're going to meet with the president, what does he want? We got to give him what he wants. I want them all thinking like that. And if they decided that what he wants is to be recognized for creating peace more than any president ever has. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? I would want that. Now, I don't see why it makes sense that there's a FIFA peace medal. It doesn't really make any sense. But every time somebody reminds the world that he is worthy of a peace prize, I don't mind that. That feels like that's good for him. Good for him, good for me, good for the world. Yeah, it makes him probably more effective the next time he tries to end a war because people will just think, oh, he's the guy who ends wars. And you just sort of automatically start acting like it's just a done deal. Yeah, he's that guy. He ends wars. So I guess he'll end this one too. So, no, I have no problem with people making up brand new peace prizes and giving it to my president. Um, Trump has apparently directed RFK Jr. to review the childhood vaccine schedule and maybe revise it to get it more in line, potentially. They haven't done the analysis yet, so they don't know what changes they might make, if any. But the thinking is that Europe does fewer shots, and we might take a look at that and see if they're getting a better result or a worse result with their fewer shots, which is smart. So I like everything about that. We don't know where it's going to end up. Bill Gates was at some event, according to Disclosed TV, and he said that African farmers will soon have AI advisors, just on their phone. AI will advise them, and better seeds and animal genetics, and that they will become, with all those things, a significant net food exporter. So Africa might go from that starving continent to, hello, look at all the food we can create. And that would be AI driven, but better seeds and animal genetics too. Do you believe that? I don't know. So I did a little grokking. I used Grok to ask some questions. And I was trying to see if there's any low trust civilization that did well economically. Because it seemed to me that if you don't have a high trust society, that you can't really make economics work because everybody's stealing and nobody trusts anybody. And, you got to have a little bit of trust or you can't make anything work. And then I wondered if Africa was a low trust um, situation. And Grok actually gave a mixed answer. It said that if you're looking at the entire continent, yes, it would be a low trust situation. But here's what Grok said, that there would be many pockets, like a tribe or a half a tribe or whatever, where the trust was very high. So the actual African culture, according to Grok, or this is Grok, I wouldn't know one way or the other, but Grok says that on the individual base level, you can often really trust people. I assume that's because they would be relatives and it's a small tribe, and if somebody tried to screw you, you would know their name and you could get back at them. So it could be that the smaller the group of people is, the more the trust is, just because you'd know what's going on with a small group. But if you're looking at the larger group, there seems to be not a lot of trust. So I'm going to differ with Bill Gates and say that if you gave a low trust continent a bunch of really good tools like AI and better seeds and better genetics, that wouldn't turn into necessarily economic success. You'd have to get to the point where at least your Department of Justice, your police, and your courts would be trusted. And I think that's the biggest thing that the United States has done right, even though maybe we shouldn't have trusted them as much as we did. But we did. And yeah, I think they need that stuff more than they need AI and seeds. They need to figure out how to have a high trust court system and less graft and corruption. That would be true for everybody. That's not just true for Africa. Well, according to the Associate Press, the AP, there's a place in Canada, Edmonton, the city of Edmonton. They've got AI-powered police body cams. So if you're a police person, that if you walk by somebody who's wanted for some kind of crime, your body cam will go boop, 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 wanted for a crime, and then you could arrest them. And it's got about 7,000 people that they would call high risk on their watch list. What do you think of that? Now, that's just 7,000 people in one city in Canada. I don't know how big Edmonton is, several million, but that feels like a lot of people. 7,000, right? It just feels like a lot. Um, so, do you like that idea that the police would know who the bad people are just by walking past them? Well, it would depend what they do about it. Yeah, if they arrest them because there's some outstanding warrant, I guess that would be good for those of us who are not criminals. Yeah. Yeah, but I think we're going to get to the point where people are wearing masks and everything else. If you were one of those 7,000 low trust people, the first thing you should do is move the heck out of Edmonton, and go somewhere where they don't have that technology. That's the first thing. Uh, so that's my advice for you criminals, all you Edmonton criminals. Move now. All right. There was an article in Axios today. Such a slow news day. Wow. That they say the title of the article on Axios was "How Trump Flipped America's Race Conversation," and the essence of the article is that we used to get all worked up when people said racist stuff, especially Trump, but now we just shrug it off. Do you believe that's true? Do you believe that Trump single-handedly made it okay, or at least not as dangerous, to say flagrantly racist stuff in public? Well, so they gave examples of the racist things that Trump has done in the past. Do you think any of them were real? No, no. Axios still believes that the Obama birth certificate situation was racist. Now, I don't know how you define racist, but one of the ways you could tell if something is racist or not would be if you could change the race of the person involved and it would look exactly the same. So the Obama birth certificate thing, if you changed him from black to anything else, Irish, let's say Irish, but there was still some open question about his uh, where he was born and what his citizenship is. Are you telling me that Trump would not have mentioned it if it had been an Irish guy? Of course he would. The most common thing that people do in politics is question whether their opponent is qualified to even be in that area. Haven't we been talking about Swalwell and whether he actually has a home in California? Haven't we talked about Ted Cruz having a Canadian connection? Is that racist? Why is that racist? If you can totally change the person in it and you can change their race and it's exactly the same story, that's not racist. It would have to be something where if you change the race, it would go from right to wrong, or you know, or something like that. But if it doesn't make any difference, and it's the normal way that even politics work, I don't know. Axios. Let's see. I think they had some other examples. Another example was that Trump allegedly called some countries shithole countries. Now, do you think he was talking about their color? No. Do you believe that if there had been a third world country that were just all white people, but they had very low educational attainment, and there were a lot of them were criminals, for example? I'm not saying that the shithole countries were that, but can you not imagine an all white country that he would throw in the shithole category because maybe they just were low trust people. I just don't see the racist part. Again, if you could change the race and he would still say the same thing, because I would, if you put me in that situation and I knew there was some, sketchy, high crime, but all white neighborhood, or let's say country, I would call that a shithole country. I don't see how that would be racist if it's all white people. Anyway, so again, that would be an interpretation by Axios. It's not something that Trump did wrong. It's something that they interpret as wrong, which is really different. And then they mentioned Trump's 2016 campaign opening, claiming that Mexico was sending rapists into the U.S. Now, how many people thought that when Trump said they're sending, criminals and rapists, how many thought that he believed that's all that was being sent, or that's all that was coming? Did anybody believe that? There's not a single person in the world who would have interpreted that as every single one of them was a rapist. Because remember, some large number of them are children and women. Did Axios think he was calling the women and children who were coming across the border illegally, was he calling them rapists? No. No. No, it's ridiculous. So the bubble that Axios has been in, or at least the writers of that article, it's the problem is them. There's no story here about Trump being one way and then turning another way. Trump has been exactly the same for the entire time. The only difference is that the people observing him went from thinking, their narrative was correct to, again, thinking their narrative is correct. It's just a narrative. They don't understand the difference between what's true and what's an interpretation or what's a narrative. All right, now let's play my favorite game, Stupid or Lying. I'm going to tell you what happened on TV, I think yesterday, and you tell me if the person involved is stupid or lying, because I actually can't tell. So I guess there was some kind of a MSNBC show in which one of the hosts of MSNBC is Stephanie Ruhle. So Stephanie Ruhle was there, but also Charlemagne the God and several other people were at the table. Charlemagne was saying that when you tune into MSNBC, you know what you're going to get, meaning that they would be taking the lefty view on things. Stephanie Ruhle said, I challenge that. You don't. And she insisted that you would not be able to predict what the MSNBC take on a story would be. Really? You really think that we can't anticipate what the story would be? I'm pretty sure I could get every one of them pretty close. Maybe not every detail, but I think we could all guess which way they'd go. Let's say Trump does a State of the Union. Could you possibly anticipate what MS, I guess they're MS now, could you possibly anticipate what their take would be? Will they say it's unhinged and that he needs to get he needs to be removed for office because he's losing his mind? Do you think they'll say that? Yes. Yes, they will. And I'm not wrong. Do you think they'll say it was dark and that it was racist? Of course they will. We all know exactly what their takes would be. So I asked the question again. Is Stephanie Ruhle stupid? Does she really not know that we can anticipate all of their takes? I mean, maybe there's 2% we get wrong, but essentially, there's no surprises. Or is she lying? I don't know. This one I can't tell. This could be stupid or lying. I don't know. Anyway, apparently there's an asteroid coming our way that has some kind of sugar essentials in it. Some little nucleobases, whatever that is, amino acids and nucleobases. And these are apparently some of the ingredients that you would expect to see for life. Doesn't mean there's any life on the asteroids, but it would suggest that the building blocks of life could be widespread across the universe because this asteroid has been many places before it was here. And if by the time it gets here, it's got these building blocks for life, that would suggest there's probably more of them out there. All right. The Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, uh, he says that I guess he told Trump that the European Union is charging Hungary 1 million euros per day for not allowing illegal migration into Hungary. Can you believe that? So Hungary doesn't want to allow illegal migration into their country, and the European Union is so mad that they're not allowing illegal people into the country that they're going to charge them a million euros a day. Oh my God. So you've probably seen that Elon Musk started advocating for the European Union to disband and that the individual countries should just go their own way and pursue their own best destiny because the European Union is just a bureaucratic layer that's ruining everything. Do you think he'll be able to get away with that? Do because I would say that the European Union is trying to destroy X. They've got that $140 million fine they're trying to put on them. If the European Union is trying to destroy X, but they're also trying to destroy free speech in the United States, what should be your opinion about them? You should want them to go away. And I don't know. I think that Elon might be persuasive enough that he could get the conversation going in a way that it has not been going up to this point. And if the only thing he does is make people talk about it, it's going to go from things we don't even consider as an option to, well, what about this? What about that? So I believe that he's already succeeding in step one of persuasion. And I've taught you this many times. Step one of persuasion is that you want the person you're trying to persuade to at least imagine that the thing you're trying to persuade them toward is an option. If they don't even think of it as an option, doesn't matter what you say. So you first have to get it in their mind that this is a potentially real thing, that maybe they can reverse the European Union and go back. Now, the second part is harder, which is where you actually change their minds. If they need to have their minds changed, I don't know. I don't know where the starting point is. They might be closer to agreeing with him than I know. Belgium may suffer. Yep. Well, I would like to know how Great Britain is doing after Brexit. So, and whether or not they're happy they Brexited. I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. What do you think? Is Great Britain happy they Brexited? I feel like they're probably happy. I don't know if they're actually better off. That would be a separate question, but probably happier because it gives them, more feeling of autonomy. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. I might be interested in entering that persuasion contest, but I would have to know more about what's going on before I do that. I would not mind lending Elon a hand in the persuasion game there, but only if I can feel comfortable that it's a good decision that they might exit the EU. It might be good for the United States, but I'd also like to think it would be good for them. If it's not good for them, well, then they get to choose. They get to choose. All right. Well, I managed to stretch that all the way to just about 8 o'clock, top of the hour. I'm going to say a few words privately to the beloved members of Locals. And if you're just joining, This is kind of interesting because I'm not at my normal desk. I'm using my iPhone as a microphone. Now, the new iPhones have just tremendous circuitry. So as a microphone, it works really well, doesn't it? You're listening to it right now. So all you have to do is in the Rumble Studio, it automatically shows up if you're on the same networks. It automatically shows up as an option, and you just choose it. It's kind of awesome. All right. And that is all I had for you. All right, locals. I'm going to come at you in 30 seconds if I can get this to work. All right, locals only in 30 seconds. And the rest of you, thanks for joining.